pulse of him.
I didn't think letting my best friend crash on my couch would change anything. I really didn't. Breakups happen. You show up, pour a drink, complain about the ex, sleep it off. That's friendship. Simple. Except when Miles stood in my doorway that night with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder and that hollow look in his eyes, something in my chest tightened in a way that didn't feel friendly at all. He didn't knock. Just used his spare key like he always had. I looked up from my laptop and immediately knew. His shoulders were slumped, his jaw tight, eyes red in that way that said he'd already cried and hated himself for it. "Hey," I said carefully. He dropped the bag by the door. He ended it. That was all. No name needed. We'd both known it was coming, even if Miles had been pretending harder than usual. 3 years with someone will do that to you. Make you cling. I stood up and pulled him into a hug before he could even think about refusing. He didn't hug back at first. Then he did. Hard. Like he needed something solid to keep him upright. "Couch is yours," I said into his shoulder. "However long you need." He nodded, but his voice came out rough. "Just tonight." I swear. I'd heard that before. We sat on the floor with our backs against the couch, a half-finished bottle of bourbon between us. He talked. I listened. Same story I'd already heard in pieces: distance, missed calls, the quiet way love can die when neither person wants to be the one to admit it. "I feel stupid," he said, staring at the floor. "Like I should have known." "You loved him," I said. "That's not stupid." He laughed under his breath. "Easy for you to say." I didn't respond. Because if I opened my mouth, something honest might slip out. Something I'd been swallowing for years. Miles leaned his head back against the couch, eyes closed. "Thanks for letting me crash." "Anytime." And I meant it. Too much. Later, when the apartment went quiet, I handed him a blanket and an old t-shirt. He disappeared into the bathroom to change. When he came back, barefoot, hair damp, wearing my shirt like it belonged to him, my brain did this stupid, traitorous thing where it went warm and fuzzy instead of normal. "You good?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah. Just exhausted." I watched him settle onto the couch, curling onto his side like he'd done it 100 times. Because he had. After bad dates. After long nights out. After fights with his ex that he swore were nothing. I turned off the lights. I should have gone to my room. I didn't. I lay on the opposite end of the couch, fully awake, listening to his breathing even out. The familiar weight of his presence felt different tonight. Louder. Like something unnamed was pressing against the inside of my ribs. I told myself it was just concern. Just habit. Just friendship stretching a little under stress. But when he shifted in his sleep and his foot brushed my leg, I didn't pull away. I stayed still, heart beating faster than it had any right to, staring into the dark and wondering when exactly things had stopped being simple, and whether they ever really were. The apartment felt smaller somehow. Not suffocating. Just charged. Like the air itself was waiting. And for the first time since he'd walked through my door, I realized this wasn't just about helping my best friend heal. It was about everything I'd never let myself want. I woke up before my alarm, disoriented for half a second until I remembered why the couch felt too short and the air felt heavy. Morning light crept through the blinds in pale stripes. My neck ached. My brain was already racing. Miles was still asleep. He'd kicked the blanket halfway off sometime during the night, one knee bent, one arm tucked under his head. My t-shirt had ridden up just enough to expose the soft line of his stomach. I noticed it immediately. Looked away. Looked back again anyway. This was dangerous territory. I knew that. Best friends didn't catalog each other like this. Didn't memorize freckles and breathing patterns and the way someone's mouth softened when they slept. I shifted carefully, trying not to wake him, but the couch creaked. He stirred. Groaned quietly. Then his eyes blinked open. unfocused at first, then landing on me. "Oh," he said. "Hey. Hey," I replied, too quickly. He stretched, arms over his head, shirt pulling tighter across his chest. I stared at the wall like it personally offended me. "Did I snore?" he asked. "No. You were fine." He smiled faintly, then his expression shifted, memory sliding back into place. His shoulders sagged again, like gravity had suddenly increased. "Right," he muttered. "Everything still sucks." I didn't argue with that. We moved around each other in the kitchen, close in that automatic way we always were. I made coffee. He leaned against the counter, watching like it mattered. At one point our hands brushed when I passed him a mug, and this time, I felt it all the way down my spine. He did too. I knew he did. Because he stilled. Just for a second. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For the coffee or the couch?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "Both." We drank in silence. Comfortable. Uncomfortable. Something in between. "So," I said eventually, "what's the plan?" He shrugged. "I'll head back later. Grab more stuff. Figure things out. You don't have to rush." He looked at me then. Really looked. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah. Stay as long as you need." Something softened in his face at that. Gratitude, sure. But there was something else underneath it. Something careful. The day drifted by strangely. We both worked from home, laptops open at opposite ends of the table. Every so often our eyes met. Every time, my chest tightened. It felt like standing too close to a line you swear you won't cross. In the afternoon, he got a text. I saw the name light up his phone before he could turn it face down. His ex. He didn't say anything. Just exhaled slowly and rubbed his face. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, then shook his head. "I don't know. He says he wants to talk. For closure." I didn't trust the word closure. Never had. "You don't owe him anything," I said carefully. "I know." He hesitated. "But I kind of want to hear it. Just so I can stop wondering." That made sense. I hated that it made sense. That night, after a quiet dinner and a couple beers, the conversation drifted to safer ground: college stories, dumb vacations, the kind of memories that reminded us why we'd stuck so close all these years. "Remember when you helped me move apartments at 2 a.m.? He said, laughing. "You paid me in pizza and emotional support. Still a good deal." We sat closer than before. Close enough that our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly. "Yeah. Why have you always been so steady with me?" His voice was soft. Unguarded. Even when I was kind of a mess. I swallowed. There were 1,000 answers to that question. I chose the safest one. "Because you're my best friend." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. Testing how it felt. We sat there after that, the TV murmuring in the background, neither of us really watching. When he finally stood and headed for the couch, I didn't follow right away. I needed a second. Needed to breathe through the tightness in my chest. Later, lying awake again in the dark, I listened to him shift, sigh, settle. This time, when his hands slipped off the cushion and brushed mine, he didn't pull back. Neither did I. The contact was small. Innocent, if you squinted hard enough. But it felt like a question. And I didn't know if I was ready for the answer yet. The next morning felt different in a way I couldn't quite name. Not awkward. Not exactly comfortable either. Just charged. Like something had shifted overnight without either of us touching it directly. Miles was already awake when I came out of my room. He was sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, scrolling through his phone with that familiar frown line between his brows. He looked up when he heard me. "Morning," he said. "Hey." There was a pause. A small one. But it stretched. He cleared his throat. "I'm gonna meet him later." My stomach dipped. "Your ex?" He nodded. Coffee. Neutral territory. I told him I can't do a big emotional thing. Smart. Yeah, he said, then smiled weakly. We'll see. I wanted to say something reassuring. Something supportive and very best friend coded. Instead, all that came out was, text me if you need an exit. His smile softened for real that time. Always do. The hours he was gone dragged. I tried to work. Failed. Cleaned the apartment even though it was already clean. I caught myself checking my phone like I was waiting for bad news, and hated myself for it. When the door finally opened, I knew before I saw his face how it went. He dropped his keys louder than necessary and leaned back against the door, eyes closed. His shoulders looked heavier than when he'd left. Bad? I asked. He laughed once, humorless. He cried. I didn't. Which somehow made me feel worse. I stepped closer. Not touching. Giving him space to choose. He said he still loves me. Miles went on. Said maybe we just needed time. Like that fixes everything. And what did you say? That I don't think love is supposed to feel like begging. That landed quietly between us. He opened his eyes then and looked at me, really looked at me, with something raw and unguarded. I don't want to go back, he said. I just don't know what comes next. I nodded. You don't have to know yet. He exhaled, long and shaky. Can you just sit with me for a minute? We sat on the couch, shoulders touching, his knee pressed against mine. This time it felt deliberate. He leaned forward, elbows on his thighs, and I stayed right there, solid and quiet. After a while he said, Do you ever feel like you build your life around other people? And then one day you look up and realize you don't actually know what you want? My heart thudded. Yeah, I said softly. I do. He turned his head toward me. The space between our faces felt suddenly very small. You're really good to me, he said. Not casually. Not offhand. Like it mattered. So are you, I replied. His hand shifted, resting against mine. Not grabbing. Not pulling away. Just there. The TV was off. The apartment was quiet. I could hear his breathing. Feel the warmth of him beside me. Nothing happened. And somehow, that felt bigger than if something had. Later, when he went to bed on the couch again, he didn't bother with the far end. He settled closer, our legs brushing, our hands finding each other easily in the dark. We stayed like that, fingers loosely intertwined, saying nothing. It felt less like a question now. More like an answer forming. We didn't talk about the hand holding the next morning. Or the way I woke up tangled halfway off the couch with Miles's arm draped over my waist like it had always belonged there. I noticed it the second my eyes opened. The warmth. The weight. The fact that neither of us had moved away during the night. I stayed still, breathing shallowly, afraid that acknowledging it would make it disappear. Miles stirred first. His arm tightened slightly before he seemed to realize where it was. I felt the hesitation travel through him. The moment where he could pull back. He didn't. Instead, he let his hand rest there another second. Then another. When he finally shifted, it was slow and careful, like he didn't want to spook me. Morning, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Morning. We looked at each other too long. Just a beat too long for comfort. Or maybe exactly long enough. Sorry if I... He started. It's fine, I said quickly. Too quickly. Then softer. I didn't mind. He studied my face, searching for something. When he nodded, it felt like relief moved through both of us at once. The day unfolded in small, domestic moments that felt way too intimate for what this was supposed to be. We went grocery shopping together. Argued lightly over which pasta sauce was better. He stood too close while I cooked. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. At one point, he brushed past me in the narrow kitchen and his hands slid over my lower back. Not accidental. Not lingering either. Just enough to leave heat in its wake. I froze. So, he said, clearing his throat. I talked to my sister. Oh? Yeah. Told her I'm staying with you for a bit. And? She said, about time you leaned on someone who actually shows up. That hit somewhere deep. Smart woman, I said. He smiled. Yeah. She always liked you. There it was again. That careful look. Like he was testing a thought out loud. That night, we didn't bother pretending the couch was enough space for both of us. We lay side by side, facing each other, inches apart. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the distant city noise through the window. Miles, I said quietly, heart pounding. We should talk. I know, he replied. I was hoping you'd say that. Silence stretched. Not awkward. Just full. I don't want to mess this up, he said. You matter too much to me. You won't, I said, even though fear flickered in my chest. But we can slow down. We don't have to define anything. He nodded, eyes soft. I like that. Slow. His hand reached out then, stopping just short of touching my cheek. A question. I leaned in. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. Just his forehead resting against mine. Warm. Steady. Familiar in a brand new way. We stayed like that for a long time, breathing the same air, letting whatever this was settle into place without rushing it. And for the first time since he'd shown up at my door with a broken heart, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to end. It felt like something was beginning. The first real crack in our careful bubble came on a Sunday afternoon, quiet and gray, the kind of day that makes you feel like time is stretching instead of moving forward. Miles was on the couch, scrolling aimlessly, while I folded laundry at the table. It all felt almost normal, too normal, for how charged everything underneath had become. Can I ask you something kind of scary? He said suddenly. I didn't look up right away. You can ask. He sat up, elbows on his knees. How long have you been doing this? Doing what? Showing up for me, he said. Like this. That made me stop folding the shirt in my hands. I set it down slowly. Always, I said. Honest. Simple. He nodded, chewing on that. I'm realizing I leaned on you way more than I admitted. Even when I was with him. There was no accusation in his voice. Just clarity. It still stung, but not in a way that made me want to retreat. I let you, I said. He looked up. Did I ever make it harder for you? I met his eyes. Sometimes. He swallowed. Why didn't you say anything? I thought about all the versions of myself who'd chosen quiet over risk. Because I didn't want to lose you. That landed heavy between us. Miles stood and crossed the room, stopping a foot away. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him. He didn't touch me. Yet. I hate that, he said quietly. That you felt like you had to shrink. You didn't ask me to. I said. I made that choice. His jaw tightened. Still. For a moment, it felt like the air was pressing inward. He lifted his hand, hesitated, then let it rest against my chest, right over my heart. I don't want you doing that anymore, he said. Not with me. My breath caught. Miles, I know, he said quickly. I'm still figuring things out. I'm not saying I have answers. I don't want to pretend I don't feel this. This being the space between us. The pull. The honesty we'd been circling. I covered his hand with mine. Neither do I. The kiss wasn't dramatic. No rush. No desperation. It was slow, careful, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile and precious. His lips were warm. Familiar in a way that surprised me. Like this had always been an option we both quietly ignored. When we pulled back, our foreheads rested together again. His breath was uneven. That changes things, he murmured. Yeah, I said. It does. He smiled, small, real. I don't regret it. Me neither. That night we didn't go further. We didn't need to. We fell asleep tangled together on the couch, his head on my chest, my arm around his shoulders. It felt safe. Grounded. In the quiet, I realized something important. I wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, at least we were finally being honest. And that felt like more than I'd ever let myself hope for. The morning after the kiss, I woke up with Miles still asleep against me, his head heavy on my chest, his arm draped across my stomach like he'd forgotten any other way to rest. Sunlight spilled across the living room, catching the dust in the air, making everything feel exposed and tender. For a split second, panic flared. The what have we done kind. Then Miles shifted, his forehead brushing my collarbone, and sighed, content, warm, safe, and the panic dissolved into something quieter. Something steadier. He trusted me. That mattered more than the fear. I didn't move until he woke up on his own. "Hey," he murmured, voice thick with sleep. "Hey." He didn't pull away right away. Just looked up at me, eyes soft, like he was checking if I was still there. "Still okay. You regret it?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Do you?" "No." He paused. "I just don't want to pretend it didn't happen." "Then don't." That earned me a small, relieved smile. We moved slowly that day. No dramatic declarations. No sudden labels. Just small adjustments. Him brushing his teeth beside me, borrowing my hoodie instead of his bag, sitting closer than necessary because it felt right. At one point, his phone buzzed again. Another message from his ex. He glanced at the screen, then at me. "I don't think I need to answer that anymore," he said. I didn't tell him what to do. I just nodded. He turned the phone face down. That evening, we cooked together, shoulder to shoulder, music low in the background. It felt almost absurd how natural it was. Like this was a version of our friendship that had been waiting quietly in the wings. "Can I ask you something else?" he said, stirring the pan. "Yeah." "When did it change for you?" His tone was careful. Not accusatory. Curious. I thought about it. About all the almost moments I'd buried. "I don't know if it ever changed," I admitted. "I think I just stopped lying to myself." He nodded, absorbing that. "I wish I'd figured it out sooner." "Maybe you figured it out exactly when you needed to." That made him smile. Later, we sat on the couch again. Of course we did. This time, he leaned into me without hesitation, my arms settling around him like muscle memory. The TV played something neither of us cared about. "I don't know what this turns into," he said softly. "Me either. But," he added, fingers curling lightly into my shirt, "I know I don't want to rush away from it." I rested my cheek against his hair, breathing him in. "Then we won't." The night ended quietly. No fireworks. No second kiss. Just closeness, warmth, and the kind of calm that comes after honesty finally has room to breathe. As I lay there, listening to him drift off, I realized something else too. This wasn't about saving him after a breakup. It was about letting both of us be seen. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The shift from something happening to something real was quieter than I expected. No big conversation. No announcement. Just Miles staying. Not crashing. Not hiding. Staying. He moved his duffel bag into my room one evening without making a thing of it, sliding it against the wall like it had always belonged there. I watched from the doorway, heart thudding, pretending not to care while caring way too much. "You okay with this?" he asked, finally glancing up. I nodded. "Yeah. I am." That night, we shared the bed for the first time. Not tangled. Not charged. Just close. His back to my chest, my arm resting around his middle like it had found its place naturally. When he exhaled and relaxed into me, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't temporary anymore. A few days later, he came home quiet. Not sad. Thoughtful. "I ran into him," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. I waited. He asked if I was seeing someone. Miles leaned back against the fridge, arms crossed loosely. I didn't lie. My chest tightened. What did you say? That I'm with someone who feels right. He met my eyes. That I'm done confusing comfort with love. I didn't say anything. I just stepped forward and pulled him into me. He melted instantly, forehead pressing into my shoulder, arms wrapping tight around my waist. Thank you for not pushing me, he murmured. For letting me land instead of fall. You never had to earn a place here, I said quietly. You just had to stop running. He laughed softly at that. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in months. Later that night, we lay together in the dark, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my arm. No urgency. No fear. Just presence. You know, he said after a while, I think I've been in love with you longer than I realized. I swallowed. Yeah? Yeah. I just didn't know what to call it until everything else fell away. I turned slightly so our foreheads touched. I've known for a long time. He smiled against my skin. I figured. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The moment didn't ask for proof. As he drifted off, breath evening out, I stared at the ceiling and let myself finally feel it. Relief, warmth, something steady and grounded where longing used to live. This wasn't a rebound. This wasn't a mistake. This was two people choosing to stay. And in the quiet, I understood something clearly for the first time. Sometimes love doesn't crash into your life. Sometimes it waits patiently, until you're brave enough to stop calling it anything else.